This is the Book Deal podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strachan.
I'm Madeline Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors,
one deal at a time. The Book Deal podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to the Book Deal podcast. I'm Tina Strachan, and I am delighted to bring you this week's interview with young adult crime writer Amy Doak. Amy has had a huge 2 years, starting with her best-selling debut, Eleanor Jones Is Not a Murderer, followed up by two equally exciting books in the series, with a fourth on the way, and most recently a standalone crime thriller, What Have They Done to Liza McLean? I know you'll enjoy our chat as Amy shares her publishing journey, which includes a lot of hard work sprinkled with a little bit of good fortune. She shares her writing habits and processes, tips for smartly navigating the pitching and querying process, and what it means to write for a young adult audience. Enjoy. Amy, congratulations on your latest book, released just at the end of last year, so not long ago. What Have They Done to Liza McLean? Congratulations. Another great crime mystery thriller from yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about the book? Give us your pitch and give us your one-liner too.
Okay, so What Have They Done to Liza McLean is a twisty YA mystery thriller set in a secretive elite boarding school, and it asks the question, what would you be prepared to give up in order to have it all? It's told by two protagonists with 2 points of view. So Meg McLean is a scholarship student and she's very studious. And her younger sister, Liza, is the opposite of that. She's not studious at all. And almost overnight, she changes and something happens to her. And then we also told the story by Benedict Hargraves IV, known as Benny. And he's probably the richest boy in school, but he's got a few secrets of his own. And when their search to uncover those secrets aligns and a dead body shows up, they have to work together to find out what's going on at Douglas College.
I love that. What a great premise. It is very twisty as well. I love that about your books. So that's a fantastic one-liner. One-liners are tricky, really tricky. What's your tips? Any advice? Any advice?
I don't know. I tend to go a lot with comps. I've always watched a lot of movies and read a lot of books, and I love that this meets this. And when I was pitching Eleanor Jones, I pitched it as a modern day Nancy Drew meets The Dry. And even though it's sort of none of those things, because it's probably more like Trixie Belden, because there's a group of kids rather than one main protagonist, but a lot of people don't know Trixie Belden, but everyone knows Nancy Drew. And it's not serious like The Dry, but it is set in a country town in Australia, and it has that same small town feeling of the Aussie noir books, and people understand that as a reference. So I think sometimes with the one-liners, you almost need to create a bit of a vibe. And even with What Have They Done to Liza McLean, I talked about it being like Wild Child meets Don't Worry Darling, in that there's the fish out of water at a boarding school that's full of very wealthy people, and then you've got this sort of speculative side of a mystery as well. So even though if you really unpicked it, it's actually none of those things, but it still creates that feeling that people understand what they're going in for. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing with comp titles, and I love talking about or asking people about how they come up with their comp titles, because it is a bit of a skill, and it's really important, especially for aspiring authors who are trying to come up with one-liners or pitch their book. It doesn't, like you said, have to necessarily be exactly what's in that book, right? But it's more of a vibe. That, you know, you think if someone says The Dry, you automatically have these visions in your mind. So it, like you said, it doesn't have to be exactly like that, but it's as long as it's giving that vibe to the person that you're telling it to. I really like that. And that mix of books, movies, you know, you can just sort of mix them all together to create that vibe. I really like that, because I'm actually in the midst of that at the moment, creating a pitch, and I'm trying to find my comp titles, and I just go down such a big rabbit hole and waste so much time, because I'm like, I'm trying to find the perfect
Yeah,
prompts,
yeah.
and they don't have to be.
No. And the thing is, if you have got this unique story, even though we're all kind of recycling the same stories over and over again, but we're doing it our own special way, that if you want to be able, you want to be able to compare it to things that exist that everyone loves. And so when you're in it, though, you sort of think, oh no, am I being a bit arrogant saying it's like that? Or am I being a little bit, am I underselling it saying it's like this? Will people get confused? And you start to overthink it, and then it.
Yes, yes, I know. And not everyone can know every single book,
True.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have also heard, like, just don't go too high. Like, as in, I think there's lots of people who have pitched their books as it's the next Harry Potter,
Yeah.
or the next Twilight, or
Yeah.
something like that. Which, I mean, you could probably get away with that, but or the next Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
or something. So yeah, it's something around that, but maybe not as
Yeah.
super like well known as that, I guess. Okay, that's really good advice. Okay, I'm going to stop doing that. I think it's as in like stop
Good luck.
overthinking.
Let me know how you go with that, if you know the
Thank
secret.
you. Thank you. I'm a big overthinker, so that's great. But it's good. I get to, look at all the other books and things. It's interesting. So you mentioned the Eleanor Jones series just before, and you're very well known for the Eleanor Jones series. We were just saying before, I can't believe it's only been 18 months since
2.5 years.
Oh, sorry, 2.5 years since it hit the shelves.
Yeah.
Feels like it's been around for so much longer. We feel like you've been around for so much longer, as we were saying. And so we've got Eleanor Jones, and the series is not finished yet.
Number 4 is coming out in July, actually. So Eleanor Jones Is Not Drowning is the next one, and I'm actually doing copy edits on that at the moment. So.
Okay. Oh, that's fun. It's very exciting. I'm sure lots of people are hanging out for that 4th one to come out. But so tell us about how Liza McLean fit in there then. Did you just decide, I just want to, in the midst of writing this big long series, I'll just like start another book?
Well, no, I think it was more that my initial contract that I signed was for 2 books, and it was for 2 Eleanor books. And I didn't know, even though I had told people that I had ideas for 4 initially, and I didn't know if they would want 4, because obviously it could have just completely flopped and no one wanted to read it and it was a disaster. And so I started working on Liza thinking, well, look, if this doesn't pan out and nobody wants any more, then at least maybe I've got something else to show. And I think also I didn't want to be a one-trick pony. I didn't want to just be known for this one character. And I wanted to prove to myself that maybe I could write something else that people would like just as much. And then I did it, and then I was terrified that I was a one-trick pony. Everyone was going to hate it. So it was actually quite a emotional roller coaster in my mind when I was going through that whole process, right through to even right through until published, till the day it came out. Even I was so terrified that I had done the wrong thing and that no one would like it, and that I'd be compared to Eleanor, and people would be upset that it wasn't the same. And it's been really lovely, actually, that the feedback has been really positive. So
yeah, absolutely. Certainly, you had nothing to worry about there. I think everybody was just keen to see more of what you could do, and just gobbled that one up. But yeah, so that's interesting. Had you finished, like you say, you're doing copy edits now on the 4th Eleanor Jones. So had you actually written all 4 before you started? No, just the 2?
No, well, 1, and I'd started on a second one, but and then by the time the first one came out, I had finished the second one. So I've been on the front foot a little bit, which people kept saying, how have you written so much in such a short amount of time? But I had a period where I was under contract, and I had essentially nothing to do except for to write, which was such a lovely thing to be able to do. So yeah, I made the most of it and just kept going, and I'm still trying to do that now. Yeah.
So I think that's a really important point, though, isn't it, for people who are pitching, and even if they haven't got anything out at the moment and they're wanting to pitch their first works because they've maybe completed it, which is often what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Before you're signed, you have to have your full manuscript. Is when you do actually send it off to an agent or to a publisher or wherever you're sending it to, start working on something else.
Yeah, definitely. I worked in magazines for a while in my 30s, and one of the things you learnt was that you're always working a few issues ahead. And so everyone would be really excited about what's just come off the print and off the press, and you're way ahead, already 2 issues in front of that. And I think I've kind of kept that mindset that as soon as I've done the work and I've sent it off and there's nothing more, it's all out of my control, it doesn't belong to me anymore, and it's out in the world, and I just have to concentrate on creating that next thing. And that's sort of the thing that keeps me sane as well. I think if I was so worried about the outcome of a creative project, that I would just turn myself in knots and never leave the house. And so I think that just by focusing on that next thing is really helpful.
Yeah, because there's a point where you just can't do anything more.
No.
And yeah, I'm the same as you when I had deadlines with my edits, and there's times where there isn't anything more that you can do. You are waiting on something to come back, and that wait can be quite long. And I'm certain, so the same thing when you are sending off manuscripts for the very first time, it could just like send you around the bend waiting for a response, right? Because it's such a slow process and it takes a really long time. And if you waited for every response to come back, I think a lot of agents and publishers say if you don't hear anything in 3 months, then it's a no. So you're waiting 3 months everywhere anyway. And if you did that with everyone, you'd never write anything ever again. So it is a good way to kill the time, isn't it? And take your mind off of it. It's and sometimes I've heard of publishers come back and say, that was really great, really love the premise, not for us at the moment, but have you got something else? And like you were saying before, you wanted people to know you're not a one-trick pony. Not that anyone thought that was the case, but it's important to have something else up your sleeve.
And I've met, I love that about when you speak to other authors about sort of their journey, and everyone's is so different, right? And I remember meeting an author. She had written 9 novels and pitched 9 novels and had none of them accepted, but she loved the process and she kept going, and her 10th novel got picked up by a major publisher in the UK, and they said, what else have you got? And she said, well, I've got these other 9, and they took all of them.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
There's great stories like that out there that keep writing.
That's an incredible story. And just again, like it's not right for someone, it's going to be right for someone else, maybe, and the markets are so different, between the UK. They're all looking for different things. So if you are busying yourself writing in those gaps of time with your contract, does that mean, are you a daily writer? Do you write every day?
I wish I was. I thought for a long time that I wasn't a real writer because I didn't write every day. But then I have now realized that writing isn't necessarily sitting down typing. I definitely am in my story every day. And sometimes I'll even reread what I've written and I'll make notes about things, but I didn't count that as writing. So I think the definition of writing versus typing is, I was taking it a little bit too literally, that I actually had to sit down and write X amount of words every single day on my manuscript. And I definitely don't do that, but I do always carry, when I'm working on a story, it's in my head, probably front and center, much to my friends and family's disgust. But
well, you live in the world, don't you?
Absolutely.
In your mind. What's the saying? Writing is actually just rewriting. Is that the saying? And it is. So rewriting is absolutely part of it. And research, often you have to do a lot of research as well, don't you? So that's a very important point. It doesn't have to be progressing the story every day, unless you've got a lot of time, maybe. But progressing it is the research and having your mind in it, isn't it?
And I like to write in chunks as well. So I'll tend to write a lot, and like a few thousand words in a day or a sitting, and then I'll not write for a couple of days while I really get this next scene or the next moment really clear in my head, and then I'll sit down and do a whole bunch again. So I'm probably a bit of a binge writer in that way. And I find that that's more fun for me, because I'm not then twiddling my thumbs at a desk and just not knowing what's coming next. I'd rather be out in the world doing things and thinking about it and knowing what comes next. And then I can't wait to rush back to the computer and sit down and type it out.
Yes, I like that. So are you, would you call yourself a plotter or a pantser, or any of them?
A plantser? I'm probably in the middle.
I think most people are.
I think so. I do think that. I think it is a spectrum as opposed to a either or. And I tend to think about some key scenes pop into my head really early on when I have a concept for a story, and then I almost want to work to those scenes and find a way there. So it's like I have I guess driving in the fog, you see the signpost every now and then and you keep going down that white line, but outside of that, you've got no idea what's going on. So what I'm working on at the moment is probably the most that I've ever plotted. I actually know who did it this time, which I normally don't really know until about a third or a quarter of the way in. And that I'm actually finding that difficult because I'm struggling to know how many clues to give away and all of those things. So there'll be probably a bit of rewriting with this one.
Yeah, that's fine. So then if you don't know who, and I've heard lots of crime authors talk about this, they don't know who it is until they're halfway through or sometimes right near the end.
Yeah.
So does that mean though that sometimes you do have to go back and then hit those key moments that you're supposed to, like plant some more seeds or change a few things because you're like, well, if it was that person, they probably wouldn't have done that?
Yeah, I think you do that anyway, to add in a few more clues or plant a little red herring or do some things like that just to make it a more fun experience for the reader. But I think the joy of not knowing who did it, you make everyone potentially guilty. And so then you're finding out alongside the reader. So what I fall into the trap of doing is once I've decided someone didn't do it, I really fall in love with my characters and I want to be friends with all of them. And and so I have a tendency to be too nice. And once I've decided that they didn't do it, then it's really obvious that they didn't do it.
Oh, right. Yeah, I see. So that probably works really well for crime then, is to just, I see what you mean. You don't want to know who it is because you don't want to be so obvious about it, even though it might not be to anyone else, but in your mind, it's making it more difficult, right?
Yeah.
I see. Oh, that's incredible. That's really cool. I like that. So tell me, Liza McLean, is that just going to be a standalone, or are we going to see more from Liza?
It was planned as a standalone. So, and I don't know, we've talked about it, about, what could happen in that world, but I think that it would be hard to go back to the school, given how I ended the book. So no spoilers there.
No spoilers. And so given that you're doing copy edits then on the fourth Eleanor Jones, once you hand them in, does that mean you'll be working on something else?
Yeah, so I'm also drafting an idea at the moment that nobody's asked for, but we'll see how that goes. And I've got a few other things that I would love. I feel like I'll never live long enough to be able to execute all of the ideas. And so we'll see what happens. I guess it's just a case of getting as much writing as I can get done and then putting it out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. There's truly not enough time. I'm the same. I have so many ideas. I've got so many sort of brain dumps of ideas that have come to me. I feel like when you think about it logically and how long it takes you to write one book,
I know.
How will I get all of that done? Just not enough time. I love that. So when you have ideas, are you dumping them down somewhere, or are you just keeping them up in your mind?
The ones that seem to be the stickiest seem to be the best. So the ones that hold on and really, it's almost like I don't know, it sounds strange, but I'll finish a story and sort of emerge from my writing cave and see which character's sitting in the waiting room with a hand up ready to go next. And that person that wants to tell their story kind of is the next cab off the rank. So and I like that. I like that the one who's the noisiest in my head is the next idea I have to go to.
Oh, I really like that too. Yeah, you're drawn to them and you're feeling them. Yeah, that's great. Can you tell us now practically, Amy, can you take us back to the beginning with Eleanor Jones and how that all happened? Because, I love a good publication journey. Can you tell us how it all started, where that idea first came from, and how you ended up signing on the dotted line?
So, I have always written and always loved. I was an early reader. I've always loved writing, and I would write little vignettes. I would write maybe 10 or 15,000 words of an idea, and then I'd probably get stuck, or something new and shiny would come along, and I would take that. In my 20s, I did a lot of courses. I did writing and editing diploma at TAFE, and I did lots of weekend courses and all sorts of things because I wanted to write. But I never told anybody that I wanted to write. It was like this sort of secret thing, which a lot of writers do. And It wasn't until maybe about 2017, I started being a bit honest with friends and family that this was something that I really wanted to do. And in 2019, I was working as a freelance writer at the time and writing nonfiction and some very dry stuff in that process. And I had all of these ideas swarming of stories and things I wanted to do. And I'd done a retreat with some business owners, and we did an exercise of writing a letter to your 15-year-old self and how they would see you now. Would they be proud of you? Would they be sad that you hadn't done this one thing that you always wanted to do? And I realized that 15-year-old me would be really cross that I hadn't written that novel yet, because it was something that I've always wanted to do. And so I came home from that trip and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously. I'm gonna do it. I was in a situation with my work that I had some stability, and I knew I had a few years, perhaps with the age of my children as well, that I had some extra time. Like, kids tend to have busier periods than others through their their lives.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, I've got these three really solid ideas. I'm going to write three novels from start to finish in 5 years. I'm going to give myself that time. And then when I get to the end of that 5 years, my kids will be in senior high school, and they'll probably need a little bit more of me. And I'll wait then until they're grown and out of home, and then I'll try again later if nothing comes from that. And then COVID happened.
Yes.
And ruined everybody's plans.
Sure does.
But I was still working on something. The first idea that I was working on was actually an adult action adventure thriller. And I am really fortunate. I've got some wonderful writing friends locally here, and one of them, Katrina Nannested, lives down the road from me, and she's the world's best cheerleader. Like, she's as kind as she is talented. It's ridiculous. And she was so supportive of me, and she said, "Righto, you give me your chapters as you're writing this. Give me your chapters." And so it was, lockdown, and I was homeschooling kids and all of those things and doing my own work. And then I knew she'd message me and say, "I'm coming to the supermarket," or I'm going past your house, leave them in the letterbox. And then I'd get this beautiful message later saying, "I loved it, keep going." Like, she just was so amazing. And because of that, I was able to get that first book finished. And I pitched it, and I polished it up. I know an editor, and I had some great beta readers who read in that genre, and I made it as shiny as I possibly could, and I pitched it, and everybody rejected it. And I had a wonderful meeting I actually joined lots of different groups at that time. I joined ASA and Sisters in Crime and a few other, that had great resources. And one of the others that I joined was Jericho Writers, which is a UK-based writing group, and they have some really good conversations online and great genre days about writing, which was why I joined. But I had the opportunity through that to have a 15-minute meeting with an agent in the UK, and she would read the first 10,000 words of my manuscript. And during that conversation, because previously I'd just sort of received some nice feedback with rejections, but nothing specific. And she said, "I love your writing. I think the story's great. I loved it. But I can't sell this. There's nowhere it would sit on the shelf. It doesn't belong anywhere. It's just too hard to sell." And I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't even thought about the sales and marketing side of it.
What do you think it was about that book that made it hard?
So I wanted to write almost like a Matthew Riley or a Clive Cussler, but with a female cast. And so a lot of those action adventure books are targeted towards men. And if you fill them with women, they would go in women's fiction, and it's not women's fiction because it doesn't have that same character arc or that same narrative. So it just didn't belong anywhere, and a lot of that kind of action adventure with a female lead sits in a fantasy space. Or a sci-fi even, but just not it doesn't exist, sadly, because it's what I wanted to read.
Yeah.
And so but that was enough. It was enough for me to have enough faith in myself then to go, okay, maybe I'm not awful at this. Maybe I need to give it another go. And so Eleanor Jones was my second out of my three ideas. And I guess I wanted to write for that 15-year-old me, but also my niece was that age at the time, and she was really struggling finding books that she loved. She liked watching cozy mysteries. She liked Death in Paradise, and she liked even Midsummer Murders, she liked the puzzle element, but a lot of the books that people were recommending her, like Agatha Christie, she found really dry, and she didn't relate to the characters, and it was old-fashioned, and so she was getting quite frustrated finding that kind of puzzle element, but also relating to the characters. So Eleanor was, I suppose, a bit of a love letter to both of us in a way, and she was a character that was really clear in my head really early on, and so I wrote that really quickly and loved it, and I decided to pitch it to agents instead of publishers this time, because I thought you'd give me 2 goes at it, right? So if all the agents said no, then maybe I could pitch it to publishers later. And in the meantime, I had started this third idea, and I pitched it to a few agents, and one of those agents was Alex Adsett, who is my agent now, and she came back to me pretty quickly and said she'd asked for a partial submission and asked for a full. And while she was reading the full, a girlfriend of mine had sent me a text saying Penguin have got open for submissions for the month of September. And so I had this finished manuscript, and it was sort of ready to go, and it was open for submissions for younger readers. And so that was in YA and down to picture books. And so I sent it in, and you fill out all of the information, or go through what's required and how it's to be submitted. And it, like we said before about that 3-month wait, it said if you don't hear back from us in 12, 13 weeks, then it's consider it a no. So I just thought I would never hear again. And 4 weeks went by, and I got an email from Penguin saying, can we have a chat with you? And I nearly fell over. Like, honestly, it was the last thing I expected, because I just thought, like, Penguin, no way. And so as it turned out, Mary Verney, who's now my editor, who is just amazing, like, she's so talented and so great at what she does. And when the submissions come into Penguin, whoever was at reception at the time was printing out the first 50 pages of all of the manuscripts that had been submitted. So just the beginnings, and obviously picture books would print out the whole thing. And Mary was waiting for something to be printed, and she was standing next to the printer, and my cover page came off, and she thought the title was really interesting. And then she read the first page and she liked it. And so she asked, could she take a printout of the whole thing home with her, and she took it home and read it that night in one sitting, and came back the next day and said to Zoe Walton, who was my publisher at the time, I think you need to read this. So much of it was timing and luck, and being in the right place with the right manuscript.
Yeah, that definitely does. I hear that a lot with a lot of success stories, and it's yes, there's a bit of luck to it, right? Or fortune. Maybe we do call it fortune, because it still had to be a really good book. It still had to be written really well. It just, so once you've got that part done, that's probably the most important, because then you've got to get your work out there. Like, I was just thinking how important it is to just get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Penguin, I mean, how many submissions would they get when they're open?
Hundreds.
Hundreds, and probably more. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they would get so many, because there's so few ways of getting in front of publishers. And yes, imagine if it was just in that pile. Like, someone may have got to it eventually, but it certainly is, a stroke of good fortune that she just happened to be standing there. What an incredible story.
I know. So it all happened like, everyone talks about how slow publishing is, but I had been told it's really slow until it isn't.
Yes.
And it all happened really quickly then. So I had gone from, really that August when I was pitching to agents, and the September I sent it in, and the book was on the shelves the next September.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, it's completed. It was finished, except for maybe edits back and forth and things like that. So then it's just a matter of getting it out there. And, they probably, it sounds like they were looking for something at that time. So that's an incredible story. How amazing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more? And is that when you signed with Alex after that?
Yeah,
you went to her?
I signed with Alex. So I actually messaged Alex, because she had the full manuscript, and I had messaged her when I got the email from Penguin, and she was like, yes, we need to talk. So even before I signed with Penguin, she had come on as my agent. And so then she was able to negotiate, 2 books for me instead of just the one, which was such a gift as well.
Hi
Hi, Book Deal Podcast. I'm Amanda Hewitt, author of Echo Publishing's contemporary romance, The Last Resort, which is out now. The Last Resort starts with 42-year-old Sydney-sider Abby Parker on the first holiday she's ever taken by herself. She's in an idyllic paradise, processing who she is following the end of her marriage. In the room next door is Londoner Nick Northby, 41, a fellow solo traveller, avoiding the sun, tourists, any social interaction at all. He can't avoid having to rescue a tipsy Australian woman from the water, though. Their chemistry is immediate, and they embark, with a little push, upon a passionate holiday fling. Back home in Sydney, Abby is back to the real world. Mortgage stress, single parenthood and family. When she heads back to work at Delacqua Hotels on Monday, she is surprised to hear that the hotel chain has been purchased. The new owner? None other than her holiday romance, Nick Northby. The Last Resort is a funny, warm and poignant novel about a woman finding her voice in her 40s. It's a story which explores our ability to take the leap of faith required to fall in love when the realities of middle age have left us with baggage of the non-holiday variety. I'm a writer based in the south of Sydney, a mum to 3 boys. The Last Resort is the first manuscript I've ever submitted and was the only manuscript signed to a deal from 300 others when Echo opened submissions in August 2024. Publishing is a whirlwind and an emotional roller coaster, and honestly, I don't want to get off. I've loved it. My favourite thing so far has been seeing readers' reaction to the book, which has been encouraging and delightful. If you are the kind of reader who gets to the end of a romance novel and thinks, ugh, I just wish they were older, The Last Resort might be the book for you.
So can you explain a little bit more for people that don't know or are thinking of pitching publishers, what you meant by pitching agents first, and then it kind of left the publishers open for you?
Yeah, so there's so many great pitching opportunities, and not just in Australia, but worldwide. And that might be publishers and agents who have on their websites that they're looking for submissions. Often they'll have that on there. But then there's also things like the Australian Society of Authors has speed date pitching. It's not called that. It's a version of that. I always get it wrong.
It is. It's literary
Literary
speed
speed
dating.
dating. Yeah. And there's, a few other groups that you can go to. You can, festivals sometimes. I actually pitched through sidebar, sorry. But one of the things that was such a gift to me was the Romance Writers Association. I've got a few friends who are romance writers, and even though I don't write romance, I went to a couple of years of the Romance Writers Conference, and I met the most amazing people. But the thing about romance writers is they take their craft very, very seriously, probably more seriously than any other genre. I think that their readers have really high expectations, and those expectations must be met. So yeah, in 2021, I actually went to a romance writers conference, and I didn't know anyone until I got there, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. But there was an opportunity through that to pitch to agents and publishers. And so the first year, I went 2021 and 2022, I think. Yeah, but that year before that, I had done the speed date pitching, and I had pitched to both an agent and then 2 publishers. And I think the thing is, when you pitch to a publisher, if they're not interested, unless they tell you to revise it and come back to them, you're sort of done with that idea. You can't go back to that same person again and say, hey, I rewrote it. I know you weren't interested last time.
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of done. And so I think with an agent will obviously go out and try to sell it to different publishers on your behalf. And so for me, I felt like pitching to agents, if the agent said no. Also, agents tend to give you a bit of feedback as well. Publishers have so many submissions and so many people come to them, they just can't give you an individual response to that. Whereas often the agents might give you a little feedback, maybe try this or go this way or whatever. And so I thought that by pitching to agents first, that might allow me a little bit more feedback if I had to make changes. And second to that, that if they all said no, and then maybe I tried to sell it to publishers just off my own bat, that there might be another opportunity there down the track. But you know, a lot of publishers and agents, they've all been in the industry for such a long time, and they know what sells, and they know what they're looking for, and you know, all of those things. So I did find that often the feedback was much the same from everybody when you when you're looking for it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And all those pitching sessions, like you mentioned a few there with ASA, and I've done a few through the CYA competition, or the CYA conference, do pitches as well, lots of them, or assessments they call them, and with publishers and with agents, and it just I can't like spruik them enough and support them enough, because it's just so hard to get your work in front of anybody, and they can be a bit expensive, some of the assessments. So sometimes you're just not in a position to book in for one. But you know, there are competitions that you can also enter, like the CYO competition, that gives you get the judges' feedback. So, and that's often a few different judges, and some are published and some are editors, and some are just readers, but all that is really important. So there probably are some sort of cheaper ways of doing it, or even just entering competitions and potentially getting that feedback back for free. But it means that you often get time, face-to-face time or Zoom time with the publisher or the agent. And it's so important, because not only are they seeing your work, and they have to read it. You've paid for them to read it, they must read it, which is incredible. And then they give you that feedback, and then you're also creating a rapport and a connection, which is also incredibly valuable as well.
The other thing I love about pitches that I think is really important too is that, first of all, no one in my life cared about what I was writing, like that. No one cares. And so to have someone who just wants to talk about your project that you're so passionate about, even if it's only for 3 minutes, is the best. It's the best. And so I say to anyone who's nervous about a pitch, I'm like, no, lean into it. Like, just love talking about the thing that you are obsessed with at the moment. But second to that is, when, just like you asked me at the beginning of this about, you know, that elevator pitch and being able to talk about you have to do, if you get your book published, you have to do that over and over and over again. And pitching gives you such a good basis for that, on how that's going to land and how people take it and everything else. It's great practice. A lot of writers are so introverted by nature, like that just tends to be a pretty common thing. And so to have that in a really safe space where someone desperately wants to love what you're doing is really such a gift. So I encourage people to pitch all the time. I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can just be open. They know that you haven't done this before, and they know, what you're here for, and just being open. And if you have to write that pitch down on a piece of paper and memorize it 1,000 times, or have it there with you, because it's not a assessment on how well you can memorize your pitch under pressure. It's just no, you know, it shows that you know your market by what you put in your pitch as well, and that you're taking it seriously.
For sure.
They're incredible. Highly recommend pitches if possible. Can I talk to you about young adult books? I love young adult books. I love writing them. I love reading them. Can you, for listeners who aren't entirely aware of what the young adult market is, can you give us a little bit about what's that target age group, and what are the things you can and can't do or should do in a young adult book?
So yes, I mean, the age groups are murky, because everyone has a different opinion about that. I sort of consider YA to be 13, 14 up. But in saying that, I write cozy crime. So that means that the gruesome stuff that happens off the page. It's not like horror. It's not like, you know, I don't go into great detail about what has actually taken place. It's more about the mystery and the puzzle. And so my books can tend to hit a slightly younger age group as well, if need be. But I think the other thing that's really important about YA is that coming of age and the things that impact that age group more than anything else. And, you know, your sense of self and the issues that you come up against with your peers and everything else is a really important aspect of the story, alongside, you know, whatever else is going on in your plot. So
so you can get a lot cover a lot more serious sort of topics now. And like you said, it is murky. It's murky with middle grade as well, you know, that
Oh,
sort
middle
of
grade
step.
is the murkiest of all.
I know, it's like it could be, yeah, it's, and there's kind of like a upper middle grade and a lower middle grade
Yeah.
and just a standard middle grade. And for those listening who aren't aware, it's sort of normally for kids 8, 9 plus to about
Yeah.
12, moving away from genre fiction, so much more words and but there's rules around that as well. There's normally no really any romance between the main characters, or you know, you certainly wouldn't talk about drugs and things like that. As in the main characters sort of being involved with it. I think you can allude to things, but and your character generally shouldn't be a teenager in middle grade, though I think the 13, I don't know, sometimes I think that a 13-year-old's sort of okay.
Yeah, it seems to be with kids that they do read up. They want their main character to be maybe a year or two older than they are. And that's where YA is interesting, because over 20% of YA readers are in their 20s or older. And so that makes it tricky too, because a lot of the time, you know, I know adults who read YA because they love the size of the book, they love the pacing, they love that they can get all of the feelings and all of the story in a maybe more achievable to read package. And yeah, so there's lots of bonuses when it comes to YA, but yeah, a lot of the time I think good readers or confident readers that are 15, 16 get encouraged to read adult fiction. And I push back on that a little bit and say that, you know, you a lot of the time you read to understand experience and to have a really solid point of reference about something you otherwise would not know about. And YA gives that gift over and over and over again.
Yeah, I love reading it. I think mostly because I feel like I am still a teenager at heart, and I just love revisiting that, because it's such that young adult time is so just filled with emotion, and everything feels so big, doesn't it? And there's a lot of pressure, but like in a good way as well. And I love that sort of time where you haven't fully started working yet, all that adulthood hasn't quite come on, and all those responsibilities, so it's just it can be a lot more fun. I find that really interesting. So you were saying that 20% in their 20s.
I think it's 28%. It's a lot.
20, yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Are you noticing that you are, like you're talking about younger readers, are you getting even younger readers reading YA now? Because I've been definitely noticing young readers, so like tweens, and like you said, the 15 plus, I think it's even younger than that they're actually just kind of skipping YA and reading adult.
And I think a lot of that comes from not from the kid themselves, but from those around them. It might be, you know, adults in their life who are saying, oh, you should read this, because that's what they know. And that is quite frustrating to me. That when you talk about, oh, you know, why are you reading this? Oh, I was given that by my aunt, or I was given that by, you know, this particular, and even I get a bit frustrated with the curriculum. That there are certain classics and books that are being read in year 7, 8, 9, 10 that I didn't even enjoy in my 20s because I didn't have that point of reference. And I think that all the things you want to talk about and unpacking a manuscript and understanding literature can be done with a book that also makes a lot of sense to the reader. And if you throw in a complicated novel on top of analysing it, you're asking so much of someone who just isn't there yet. And whether that's a teenager or whether that's an adult who isn't a confident reader and hasn't read much in their lives, like it's the same thing. But yeah, so I would just love to see people be able to read for fun a little bit more. And I think the other thing I noticed too is that once kids get to a certain age, they really start to hook into genre fiction. And so once they're a bit confident with story and they trust story and they enjoy it, then their next step should be, rather than a harder book, it should be understanding, what do you love? Do you love humor? Do you love tragedy? Do you love mystery? Do you love romance? You know, what's your thing? And we allow adults that, but we don't allow it much of kids. And so, yeah, it's interesting to me that the readers that kind of fall off, that, you know, read a lot when they're younger, and then they get to a certain age and they lose their way a bit. Often it's because they're having books shoved at them that are not their thing. And it would be like giving an adult who loves romance a thriller, or vice versa. It's not. So
I wonder with the romantasy being such a big thing, and I don't know, is there romantasy in YA?
yeah,
Is it written for that? Yeah, but it certainly is big for adult.
yeah,
And sometimes I even find it hard. I don't know if the book, by just looking at it or even reading the blurb, is it actually young adult or is it
yeah,
aimed at adults because the cover design looks the same and the words
yeah,
sound the same. Yeah,
yeah,
so so maybe like I know lots of young kids that are just jumping straight to those adult romances, say, but the content is not not okay, and maybe it's a little bit of the adults actually not understanding how different
yeah.
it actually can be.
And it goes both ways too. Like I know young readers who do want the spicy stuff. Like they're the readers who probably would have read, if they'd been a teenager in the 80s, they would have read Danielle Steele.
Mm.
And they're seeking that out, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's fine. Like if that's your thing, then that's going to be your thing. But it just like there's plenty of adults who love a clean romance, who love the closed door and love the yearning and love that the whole book has led to the holding of a hand, and that's equally as acceptable. And I think that that's something that people need to recognize too, that just as much as there's kids who want the action movie and the action book, there's another kid who wants something that's a bit more gentle and a bit um, you know more Frederick Backman-ish, but a kid version of that. And so we need to accept that that needs to be available for all. I think kids do get lumped into, and particularly like middle grade boys, I really feel sorry for middle grade boys because they get lumped into this, oh, they love sport and they can't sit still and they want something that's really pacey and action-packed and silly. I've got two boys, and my experience with both of them has been that none of those things are true. And so we, really struggled for a period of time finding things that suited them, a more gentle story and something that was, more about the puzzle, for example, rather than the action. So yeah, it's having that diversity, but also, that's hard too because we're a small country and there's only so many opportunities to get books out there. So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge, I think, in the industry in general.
It is, isn't it?
Mm.
And I wonder how much of a role BookTok was playing for those teenagers as well,
Yeah,
when because there's obviously still a lot of teenagers on BookTok and
yeah,
it's aimed, I guess, maybe at adults initially, but yeah, they're being influenced by that as
yeah,
well. It's had such an
sure.
impact, hasn't it? Have you
Yeah,
noticed that?
yeah.
Have you had to do much with BookTok? Is that your
No, well,
thing?
I mean, Eleanor's only exists in Australasia. So I don't have an American contract or a UK, and so because of that, I had a few frustrated people from America and England message me and say, I saw your book online and it looks like I would love it, but I can't get it here unless I pay a small fortune. So, there's the challenges that come with that. So, and I think too, when it comes to TikTok and social media in general, you can't make yourself go viral. Someone else has to do that for you, unfortunately. So
Yeah, that's true. And there's doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. So you
no,
can't really try. Just do what you feel comfortable with.
just to write another book.
Yeah, just focus on the writing. Yes, absolutely. Amy, so that's a lot. Like you said, you've got kids. We were talking about like the kind of author admin is a thing that I didn't realize how busy that it actually is. Can you tell us how you fit it all in? How do you manage everything? I mean, there's probably no answer, but any tips or advice for everybody trying to fit everything in
Yeah.
and focusing on, we just spoke about social media as well. There's a lot more to writing than just sitting in our room and typing at the keyboard.
Yeah. I think definitely the actual writing is the priority, and anyone who has, spent 3 days putting together a reel or a TikTok and hasn't written in their manuscript in that time, maybe needs to just check if they really want to be writing. And so I would rather people, do very little social media and give me another book instead. I even think that about my favorite authors
Mhm.
myself. Like if I had to choose between seeing them online every day or giving me another book a year, then I would choose the other book every time.
Mhm.
And I have to remember that for myself too, if I ever get caught up in it. Um, I've always been someone who's had to work in the cracks. had my own business for a long time, and like I said, I was working as a freelance writer. And so when my kids were little, I wrote in nap time, and I wrote in, when they went to bed, and now I write at footy training, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been known to have my laptop open while I'm cooking tea and making notes or doing, edits and things like that. So I used to dream about the idea of having all day to write, and I would have, this beautiful space that I would light a candle and have a cup of tea and write my wonderful words. And it turns out, even if you do that, uh, you kind of get a bit sick of it after a few hours, and your brain's fried, and you need to stop and do something else anyway. So it's a bit of an illusion, I think, the writing all day. I think when Roald Dahl was hiding in his shed down the back of his backyard, it was probably just so he didn't have to look after his kids and do the
Yeah.
housework.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think writing in the cracks is probably something that I just got used to, and I still do that. And you just need to get over yourself a little bit, get out of your own way, and sit down and do the work. I've got a wonderful writing group, and in that is Jen Storer, who some people who work in the kids or are familiar with kids books in Australia would know Jen, and she's amazing. And she always, her saying is do the work, sit down and do the work. So yeah, we have to take that on, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so true. But there's nothing like a little bit of time pressure to kind of get you to focus, and you push everything aside, don't
Yeah,
you?
I do.
Yeah.
I give myself fake deadlines all the time as
Oh,
well.
nice.
And like I said, having Katrina ask for my chapters, I still do that to her even
Yeah.
now.
Hmm.
That forces me to kind of get things moving. And so whatever you have to tell yourself to
Hmm.
make it happen.
Hmm.
If you've got a good friend who can keep you accountable, or you tell yourself you're going to enter a competition, or you're going to pitch for this date, or whatever it may be, sometimes you do just need that little something to make you feel guilty when you're doom scrolling instead of writing.
Yeah, yeah. And joining a critique group, trying to get a critique group's always good as well,
Yeah,
because yeah, you have that deadline to work. Otherwise, you can just tinker forever.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
tinkering's not
even,
helpful.
long before I was writing, writing fiction anyway, I had organized a lunch every few months, and I just put it out to all writers around the community. So anyone who wrote, whether they wrote copywriting, or whether they wrote novels, or whether they wrote screenplays, and whoever could make it made it, and we'd meet and have lunch and have a chat, and we'd sort of go around the table and say, what are you working on? And that was a bit of a good kick up the bum too, because if you were saying the same thing each time you got there, you sort of had to look at yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone's like, didn't you say that last time? Weren't you working on that same thing 6 months ago?
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So having community is,
Yeah, for
we
sure.
always
I
say
think,
that.
yeah, we all think that writing is this really, that you should just be able to sit in a room and bang out a book, but
Mm,
it's actually, a lot of people are involved in the process, and it is
mhm,
quite a team effort at the end of the day.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it is so true what you said. I think your peak sort of creativity to get new words on a page
yeah,
is probably only maybe an hour or two, or
yeah,
maybe three if you're lucky in a day. And then
yeah,
you do just start sort of either writing waffle, or your brain
yeah,
starts just going somewhere else, and you're just not being very productive. And yeah, I mean, it works differently for everyone. I'm an early morning writer. I don't know what you're like, Amy, if you're early morning or no. Yeah, some people can write till midnight though. It's
yeah,
like, and I can't, my brain's switched off by then. Yeah, just finding that time when you're at your peak,
yeah,
and really sort of utilizing that moment, and then around that might
yeah,
maybe, when you can do some, research, or
yeah,
yeah, things like that, a bit of your admin, or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, writing comes first. So I
Yeah.
really,
And writing sprints are great too. Like, I'll sometimes put a timer on my phone, and then put another room on the microwave, and
hmm.
give myself 25 minutes and see how much I can get down in that time, and then have a break and do it again. And even that, just telling yourself, I'm not going to have any distractions for this period, and go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really useful one too, especially if you get stuck and you are just trying to get words down.
Yeah.
It is a good one if you're really struggling. So that's a good tip, Amy. But what is we always ask all our guests if they have one main top tip or piece of advice for aspiring or debut authors. What have you got for us?
Well, I've sort of said get out of your own way, sit down and do the work. But I think the other one is to be kind to yourself. You have to have a lot of self-belief to take the time away from real life and go into this imaginary world and then hope something will come out of it. And so you have to be kind to yourself. Beating yourself up is not good for longevity, I don't think. And understanding kind of what you're good at and then leaning into that is really, really helpful. So when I did do that romance writers conference back in 2021, that first one I went to, I had a half-day session with Becca Syme, who's a strengths coach, a writing coach. She's a US based, and she's done some amazing stuff online. She's got a great podcast and does YouTube stuff. But one of her focuses is Clifton Strengths, which is looking at your individual strengths and then looking at that as a writer and how that can help you produce more work and produce better work. And that was a real eye-opener to me. A lot of the skills that I took for granted, and I just thought, oh, everybody can do that. That's not special. That's not, and then realizing that actually it's quite a unique combination of skills, and I need to really be proud of that and own that and lean into it a little bit more. And also the opposite of that, not beat myself up that I can't do what other people might be doing. And so it's really easy to dismiss what you're good at and focus on what you're bad at and what everyone else is better at than you. And it's a surefire way to just make yourself crazy and give up. And so, yeah, sort of understand what you're good at and do more of that and have fun and, just really be a bit gentle with yourself on the process, because it is that marathon, not a sprint kind of an industry.
Yeah, certainly. It takes a lot of stamina, so you might as well enjoy it while you're doing it. No one wants to continue on when it's something that's just not working for you. And comparing yourself to other people, like you said, that's such a big thing, isn't it? Like just say it's hard not to. Everybody kind of does it, or
I think we're all looking for a bit of a magic button to press to get us to where we want to be. And unfortunately it doesn't work that way. It's not a linear career at all, any creative career. And I always love speaking with artists and musicians and other people who work in creative fields and learning how they have longevity in that space and how they manage to keep coming back. And it all comes down to loving the work and loving what you're doing and being excited about that's what will keep you going. So the only way you can keep showing up each day for yourself is to be a bit kind to yourself and make it fun. Yeah.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you so much, Amy. It was so great to have you on the podcast today. So many awesome tips for our listeners. Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. We're able to bring you these weekly writerly chats because of our amazing patrons. Join the TPD family by becoming a member of our Patreon community at patreon.com/the Book Deal podcast. And if you love the pod, please give us a rating or review. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.